Move to agenda item 5. 5.01, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd, members of the board. Later this evening, the board will have an opportunity to act on a resolution to approve what is being termed the transition win-win agreement. And I wanted to walk through some components with you this evening and touch on just a little bit of history for the audience and just for the record. And then I'll dive into this map a little bit for you, which is so easy to read in its current state, but we'll drill down deeper in a minute just so you understand, you and the community have a full understanding of what this agreement's about. So, 30 years ago, the suburban districts entered into this win-win agreement with Columbus City Schools at a time in which, we'll go back in history because we're talking about a time period when there was one Westerville High School, one Hilliard High School, one Dublin High School, one Olentangy High School. There's still only one New Albany High School. So it's a time period in which the conditions around Central Ohio and the suburbs were completely different than they are 30 years later today. And the development, the growth of the suburban districts, et cetera. And so in this last renewal period, which occurred this last May to June, there's a lot of discussion about the need to continue the agreement in its current condition. Hats off to Dan Good and the board and City of Columbus City Schools for taking the opportunity to take a step back and seeing if the current win-win fit with today's conditions. And I'm pleased to report here this evening that we have a resolution in front of you that will change the complexion of what win-win looks like moving forward. You may also know in past history, one other school district, Reynoldsburg, exited the win-win agreement a number of years ago, and that's been cited by folks for a long, long time period. Should be noted that time that the amount of property that Reynoldsburg was protecting was fairly minimal. We're talking about a $25,000 deal. Wasn't as large as what we're engaged in our win-win. You may also have followed the news in that recently Dublin, in particular, negotiated a different deal. There's involved change in payments and they transfer some property, or potential transfer of property, I should say. Groveport also entered into a different agreement that changed the structure of their payments to Columbus. And this evening, Southwestern City Schools Board of Education, Hilliard's Board of Education, and our Board of Education are all in the position to adopt similar resolutions to go to a transition agreement. So just some summaries of the agreement. So both parties have jointly developed an agreement that does the following. First and foremost, it does what the board asked, which is stabilizes our current boundaries of the Westerville City School District. So the boundaries as they exist today and who comes to our school stays the same under the transition agreement. The other component of this is that over the next 5 years, there'll be a decreasing payments to the point of elimination. So in this, we just renewed a 6-year agreement back in June. So over the next 5 years, we'll pay the first year 100%, and then it's 20% less each year for the next several years. So we'll go 100, 80, 60, 40, 20, which essentially rounds out to be 50%. And I'll let Bart talk about the math in a little bit. So after that, there's no more payments from Westerville City Schools to Columbus City Schools after that 5th year. There's no property transferring as part of this agreement, and there's no longer a need to revisit or reconsider the agreement every 6 years. The agreement is such that the only way it can change is if both boards adopt a resolution indicating that they want to reopen the agreement. So it basically transitions us out of the current win-win agreement. People may have questions about, well, what about the 6-year agreement? And all, essentially, in talking to the attorneys that helped us all frame this, we're using the term transition because the current 6-year agreement is there. This amends it, and we transition to it as the other agreement falls off in 6 years. So some technical pieces in there. So that's the specifics. What I do want to make sure everybody has a full understanding of is what does it mean to say our boundaries are protected? And this is where a lot of the public confusion over what win-win says and what it does can start to get in the mix. So I want to clarify. Under win-win, there are really two types of property we're talking about. There's property that years ago was annexed by the city of Columbus, but not annexed by Columbus City Schools. And at that time period, you could do that. So what happened was Columbus took township property, city of Columbus took township property, but the school district did not annex that property. So those students who had been, those families, those territories that had been attending Westerville schools continue to attend Westerville City Schools. And the payments we've been making over the years has protected those boundaries as they are so that City of Columbus schools couldn't come in and annex those properties. There's a second set of properties that are described in Section 8 of the win-win agreement. These are properties that are current township properties. Blunden Township, I'll show you some examples, is the most prevalent in that have not been annexed by City of Columbus, so they're still Blunden Township, and they come to Westerville City Schools. Under the current win-win agreement, if those properties were to be annexed by City of Columbus, water and sewer is what we're talking about, development and water and sewer, those properties under the current win-win agreement were transferred automatically to Columbus City Schools. So those families who reside in those properties, if they were annexed, would leave Westerville and go to Columbus City Schools. Under the agreement that's in front of you tonight in the resolution, that's the most significant change. When I say we protect our boundaries, we solidify our boundaries, in that those properties, if they are annexed by City of Columbus in the future, will remain Westerville City School students. And I think that's a significant point of difference between the current arrangement. What it effectively means is, from a financial standpoint, and Bart can talk about this, we're locking down our property valuation, which is where the bulk of our revenue comes from. And if City of Columbus was to annex those territories, they don't automatically annex the Columbus City Schools, and we lose revenue. And as we know, that generates about $30 million of our property tax, the win-win territories. But I do want to show you, and Jill, this map is kind of hard to follow, but I've looked at enough so I know. There is, turn the pointer on, John. So Jill's blowing up the property, and for the audience, I'm going to show you the area I'm looking at. So you have a reference point. This is Hoover Reservoir, and the property I'm going to reference in my comments up here refers to this part over here that's Blunden Township. So if you look at that territory, that's the area I'm talking about, because that's the most significant piece of territory in this agreement. So on this map, and it's hard to see from where you're at, there are vertical lines that go up and down. Let me back up. The colors are coded by school districts. All the pinkish red is Westerville City Schools territory. The yellow to the upper left is Olentangy, and you can start to figure it out. The light blue to the mid left is Worthington. Upper right purple is Big Walnut. Mid right light blue is New Albany, and mixed in there is some brownish area, which is Columbus City Schools. This, a lot of people know, this is a very cut up portion, a mix of Columbus City Schools, New Albany schools next to Westerville City Schools. So this area over here on that east quadrant is very cut up. And then south down here to Little Turtle and 270 and 161 is the territory I'm looking at. So there's a big portion of land in here along the eastern bank of Hoover Reservoir, south of the bridge, the names, thank you, Smothers, south of Smothers, and then there's a road that runs north-south here, Schott, I think it is, I may have that wrong, and that all that property is all Blunden Township, and as you notice, it's Blunden Township, it's not been incorporated. It's also abuts property that has been annexed by City of Columbus, and in some cases, Columbus City Schools, right? So that's the property that when I refer to those properties that have not been annexed, township properties, which have not been annexed by City of Columbus, which could be. In the past, this property over here, which currently is Westerville City Schools, Blendon Township, if it was annexed by City of Columbus, in the old agreement, all that would have gone to Columbus City Schools. All the houses there that exist now in any development. Under the new agreement, that territory is protected, as are some other small pockets like that pocketed throughout the district. But that's the biggest piece. Under the new agreement, if it's annexed by City of Columbus, it stays Westerville City Schools. So our property values are protected, and the homeowners there now know that unless both boards agree to reopen the resolution and want to renegotiate it, that stays Westerville City Schools. There are other small pockets like that. I'll give you a great example, and I think I have this accurately. You may recall the MI subdivision in Minerva Park at the golf course. That golf course property had to be purchased and then annexed by Minerva, Village of Minerva, into it before it could be developed. And so that protected it as part of Minerva Park. So that no longer is there. There is a apartment complex that went up on the southeast quadrant of the 161 Sunbury area, which went up within the last year. That is Columbus City Schools, Columbus City. That's part of this chopped up territory. It's kind of follows suit. There are a couple other little pockets of what's called undeveloped territory. These would be township properties, small parcels that could be subject to City of Columbus annexation, and in the past would have become Columbus City School students, now will remain Westerville City School students as they are today. So those are the changes. So our boundaries as they exist today are locked down. The payments are reduced. I'll let Bart hit on the finances. There is no difference between whether or not you are Westerville City Schools now and in a territory that's been annexed or not, you'll stay with us. So I'll let Bart maybe hit on some of the financial parts of that.
Really, the only thing that changed financially, that area was worth about $30 million to Westerville City Schools, so that'll remain with us. And like John said, in the past, if they would have built a housing development in and that property left, we lost the valuation of all that property went with it as well. Currently, if they build in there and they build homes or whatever they build, that property will now stay with us. And by law, anybody that's part of Westerville City Schools all pay the same taxes as Westerville City Schools. So now when the property is, if it's built, they'll just pick up right where everybody else is part of Westerville City Schools. They pay the same millages that everybody else pays. So it does lock in the boundaries, and it does lock in so that we don't lose any money in the future. Okay, and then when you talk about the 500, we typically, I use the number 500,000. I think the last payment was 494. But if you just stay with 500,000, the way it is, it's 100%. We'll pay for the 500,000 in May of 2017 under the first year of the contract. Next year it drops to 400,000, then 300,000, then 200, 100, and so in essence, it's going to be $1.5 million. The original agreement would have been $3 million. So in essence, when we do our 5-year forecast, we'll make that change to reflect that smaller savings throughout the next 4 years of the forecast, because it doesn't cover all 6 years. But we'll reflect that in the forecast as well. So over the course of the next 6 years, we're going to pay less and less each year to the point where we pay zero. But the cumulative value is $1.5 million versus $3 million. Okay.
So I hope I covered it adequately. Appreciate the support we had during all this. I know there was a lot of attention to it. I'm excited to be in this position, so if you have questions, we'll be happy to take them.
I know. I would say hallelujah. I mean, thank goodness for the kids and the parents, especially in that win-win area, for stability. We thank you both for working very hard on this, and the team behind you. And I think this, in the long run, helps us even financially. So for all the taxpayers of this district, this is great, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a really good opportunity not just to stabilize the boundaries of the district and attendance, population of students, but also for our long-term financial stability. I think it's going to be really helpful.
I've spent a lot of years defending our boundaries, and I am so happy to see this occur. Finally, the boundaries are secure. The boundaries are stable. The families that have gone to Westerville City Schools will continue to go to Westerville City Schools. They need not fear. The families that do not attend Westerville City Schools will remain in the districts where they are attending. I can't imagine they would fear. But our boundaries are where we have needed them to be. For decades, the boundary wars ruled so much of what went on in this part of the state. Win-Win tamped down that fire. By the time Win-Win came along, we had lost huge swaths of our original territory when Westerville City Schools was created. And through Win-Win, we were able to stabilize that to the best of the ability at the time. And as Win-Win went on through the decades, there were adjustments to it, and you can begin to see, as you look back at Win-Win's history, the progression to this point. One of the really important things about this particular negotiation is that this amendment to Win-Win was locally negotiated with local districts, local superintendents paying close attention to local needs. I give you a lot of credit, John, for the role that you played in this negotiation. That is something that I hope you're very proud of. You should be, because this is a happy day for Westerville City Schools, financially, educationally, legally, in all ways. Thank you.
Yeah, just real quickly, here, lock the boundaries, keep the money, keep the kids, and move into education. That's really what we're trying to do here. When I was running for school board, this is a true story, because all my other stories are not true. This is a true story. When I was running for school board, handed a leaflet, the very first house I visited. Opened up the door, gave the leaflet, running for school board, Rick Villardo, blah, blah, blah. He said, and I almost quote, "What the blank are you going to do about Win-Win?" And I said, "Well, you don't like Win-Win, do you?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, we're going to kill it." And then I needed to go back and study what Win-Win was and try to figure, okay, this is what Win-Win's all about. And so, no, I knew what it was. I am really grateful to these folks for working hard on this. It was really hard work at times to try and figure out how we can do this. And I too want to give a shout to the Columbus Board of Education.
Yes.
Because they're not flush with cash. They're trying to figure things out as well. And to Dan, former here and superintendent down there, good. We're moving it forward. My deal is, and always has been, I think we've always just said, let's just lock the boundaries as is, keep the kids as is, save some money down the road. So we've done, feel really good about it. Thank you for the hard work that this whole team has done. And now let's just get back in the classroom.
Thank you, and everyone on the board, and definitely thank you, Dr. Kellogg and the administration. I've had, in the course of my time on the board, I've had an opportunity to be directly engaged and sit near the heat on a couple of different items. Point View being one, and Minerva Park being another. And I'm extremely proud of our work as a team in those spaces. But I am really humbled by this development. Look, if you're on the school board, just a bit of advice, you got to be prepared to take slings and arrows and couple of beatings, and there were quite a few in this cycle. Representative Duffy, much respect to him. He stepped into the midst of an issue that had much broader reach than just Worthington. He addressed the issue as it related specifically to Worthington and his constituency, and each one of the suburban districts had a different variation of what our issues were, and they weren't similar to Worthington. Representative Duffy and I had those conversations, and again, much respect to him for bringing the issue to the fore, but the challenge that we faced as a board is we received significant communication from a small minority in the community that we were doing nothing, that we were complacent. I believe I received a couple that we were incompetent, which was odd because we had been in negotiations for months by that point, and those discussions had been already occurring. And those exchanges and those conversations and letters with Dr. Good had already been in flight. And you learn to grow a little bit of a thick skin to work through those processes because you know at the end there's a great outcome that's there if you're willing to work for it. Big kudos and accolades to City of Columbus. I agree with you, Rick. Not a win for them in the long term as it relates to basic economics, but definitely a win-win for all of us as it relates to establishing, securing, and managing our boundaries, right? And frankly, is a win for us in establishing what I had stated a number of times, both in session as well as to members of the state legislature. The reality is that win-win came about because of an archaic series of laws that were based in the township structure that go all the way back to the founding of Ohio. Every township had a school. That's the way that it worked. And when townships began to look at their schools and go, Westerville's getting bigger, Blendon, it makes sense for us to incorporate our schools into their school. That's how this whole process began. And we've not addressed the issues related to these archaic laws that we have around municipalities and townships and how those are structured. And the challenge has been that kids have paid the price. From Cleveland to Cincinnati to Columbus, kids have paid the price because of these old laws that aren't addressed. So I would encourage the state legislature to definitely address those. But I am happy that the true issue is resolved. This is a home rule issue for school districts. And I am very happy that this accord gets us to a point that if we make changes, we do what we should have been doing all along. We negotiate it as districts amongst each other, and we approve it as elected representatives within those school boards. That's the way that it should be. I cannot say I could be happier. I am ecstatic about this outcome, and I am glad that we put in the hard work to get this done. So thank you much to everybody, and thank you again to City of Columbus School District. That being said, any additional questions, issues, or concerns? Excellent. We'll move on to the next agenda topic. We move to agenda item 12.02, resolution to approve. A motion for resolution to approve bilateral agreement between Boards of Education of the Columbus City School District and the Westerville City School District. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comment relative to the bilateral agreement? Before I call roll, I will quickly state that I am extremely enthusiastic that this board and the people of Westerville that we represent, when we consider that at the end of the 6-year expiry of the current contract and the years that it took to negotiate the original, that we are stepping away from a decision that is 4 decades in place. And this is a big deal. And I am very, very proud of our community for supporting us as we've managed through this and reached this conclusion. That being said, Bart, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd.
Yes. Wow. That actually felt really good.
It did, didn't it?
All right.